right, so that means, oh, look at that. What is going on here? All right, let's see if we got this worked out. That's what I look like with a hat on, standing in the garage. All right. Listen, it is the Garage Show. The Garage Show has returned, a triumphant return. I think if you guys are thinking that I'm going to be building some engines in here, you guys think I'm going to be tearing down some stuff down, there's lots of YouTube channels for that kind of action. No, I think what we're doing here is much more casual. Let's check and see if you guys can hear me first of all, because I am in my garage. The garage door is open over there. It is a little windy out here, so you guys are going to have to give me a thumbs up. I can see a little bit on here. I can look at YouTube. There's 2 Facebook pages running. Thumbs up. Can you guys hear me or not? Is this coming in clear? Are we okay? We're hardline. We shouldn't run into any trouble out there, but I can't tell. See, let's see, enter there. All right, Kailash, there we go. Phil's Garage. Now we're getting a little something.
We got a
thumbs up. How's Facebook over there? All right, now can you hear Gen X Mom? I've turned her microphone all the way up.
Hi everyone, welcome to the Garage Show.
Now her light is green. The trap is clean. Looks good on my end, but I can't tell. You guys are going to have to tell me. These microphones are expensive, but they're very directional. They're very like right here, right now. So if I turn, watch 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Oh yeah. But if I'm right here, yeah, Gen X Mom.
Houdini already said, I see the instruction board is still up with the steering lesson.
Yeah, that's true. We did a steering lesson on that, on how gearboxes. I was teaching the kid and one of his friends just the basics on from the steering wheel down the steering column, and how old vehicles used to have gearboxes on them, and a lot of stuff's rack and pinion. Probably everything is rack and pinion by now, but they didn't understand what rack and pinion meant. They didn't understand what a gearbox meant. So I always get out I've always had a whiteboard for teaching my kids stuff, and I show them stuff. I mean, you can go to a YouTube video, you can explain stuff that way, and sometimes I do. There's some very good animated graphics on YouTube. The only problem with going to YouTube that I found, maybe not so much these days, but 10 years ago, there was so much wrong on YouTube. There were so many things that there was information. Here's how you replace a starter, and I'm watching it going, that is completely wrong. I would never do that. That's not even close. I don't know that that's the case so much anymore. I'm kind of thinking that is that the dogs coming here?
The wind just blew the door.
The wind blew it open. I kind of think that maybe all the dumbass ones have been weeded out, because there's a lot of good stuff on there. I mean, if I still had a shop, YouTube became a kind of a big thing. And TikTok came out right after I closed up my shop. So now there's tons of automotive stuff. I watch them. I watch a lot of them. Some of it I reminisce on that I miss doing it, and some of it I look at it and go, thank God am I not doing that anymore. So let me just be clear on what the Garage Show is. The Garage Show is just little stuff that I have around here, tinkering on stuff. Sometimes I showed you guys old tools that sometimes people didn't recognize, and sometimes it's new stuff where we talk about things. A lot of it is you guys asking questions. It seems to be a lot of women that will ask a question. Gen X Mom is reading YouTube. Sammy Joe's got Facebook going over here, so that if something comes through on Facebook, she'll copy and paste it for me, and then I can read it. You guys had just a lot of basic questions, a lot of stuff I can answer. If it gets too technical or too deep on something, I'll either tell you I don't know, or I'll tell you I can't describe that over what we're doing here, and then we'd have to do that together in person perhaps, or I'd steer you off to someone who could help you. So anyway, that was I'm going to go ahead and sit down, which also means I got to move things around a little bit. The problem that I'm going to have, as you guys will come to notice in the Garage Show, is it is sometimes difficult for me to jump up and jump down. Doing stuff in here just because of my back and my knees, and it just becomes a deal. I did take my pills. I should have drank whiskey, but I didn't. And if at any time you guys can't hear me or understand me, then we'll go from there and talk about that some more. Yeah, Michael Dawson, Facebook personal. Can we ask sports questions? Michael Dawson, are we in the man cave? No. Are we in a pool hall? No. Are we in a sports bar? No. We're in a garage. Now, I know man questions are all good in the garage, but let's just skip the sports questions for right now, okay? I mean, unless you're going to ask me something basic like who's better all time, Michael Jordan or LeBron, and I will tell you Jordan. Those are easy. We can skip right through those rather quickly. So one thing we talked about before, and I got a couple things we brought over here. Some of them some of them are going to be way back here. I don't know if you can see them or not, or still hear me. You can try to, but. One of the things that came about with Jacob, as you know, is one of our brand managers, and he's been hustling it up trying to get people that are interested in advertising or sponsoring with us, but they're also fans of the program. That's almost like one of his criteria. Is like when he contacts these people, he's like, do you even know who Gen X Talks is? Do you like Gen X Talks? Do you approve of Gen X Talk? Blah, 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 blah. And to my surprise, there was a lot of people that own companies or sell products that do already follow us. They already know who we are. This is like they've been following us for years. So that's kind of a good fit. Now, one of the things we talked about on one of the live streams the other day, and it was tool related, and there's a few things we have out here, and I brought this out to try to explain to you what the difference is. Now, there's a lot of guys who are going to get this right off the bat. Some may not, and some of the girls may not know. But this is a company called Zero Drive, and do you see what the tagline is on there? Gearless socket wrench. Pay attention to those words, and this is gold. I'm sure they won't all be gold. Whenever you buy something off the Snap-on truck, it was because it was their anniversary, like their 75th anniversary or something like that. Anyway, so what I want to show you guys, let me move my mic so it doesn't do that again. Gen X Mom.
Justin Bennett has a question for you.
Yeah, Justin Bennett, what do you got?
General, thoughts on building an I-31 Vortec engine into a 383 stroker to try to reach about 500 horsepower without a turbo or supercharger?
Oh, yeah, what a tough build. Did you guys hear what she said on that? That's a tough build. I guess you could probably get there. Boy, you'd almost have to go back to the book, and I'm sure they have computer programs now. And it's all going to end up with where you're at for compression and your cam. That's going to be, that's big on that right there. There's a lot of stuff that comes into that. What cam you're going to grind down there, because you're going to need that horsepower, more at the top end. That's a tough one, but I'd be impressed if you could get there. I guess you could. I haven't built a stroker motor for 20-some years, but yeah, I guess you could do that. That'd be a challenge. It'd be a fun one to watch, man. If you do that, you should take pictures and document that, because that'd be a fun one to watch and see what happens. Yeah, Gen X Mom.
Brian Hankey on Facebook, solid or hydraulic cam?
Hydraulic. I know everybody wants solid lifters. I think Loud One, Ian Porteus, is he's one of our he's a big part of Gen X Talks, and he races, but I would bet he races big block Chevys. I'm going to bet he races solid only. I'm going to guess. That's, the solid lifters, you have no allowance for lag or compression or bleed off or anything. It's just, I get it. I would say I go hydraulic just because of the simplicity of it all. You don't got to keep adjusting your valves all the time. And especially when you got different temperatures with heat and cold. Hydraulic is just such a simple, reliable way to go these days. It didn't used to be, but it is now. Gen X Mom.
Justin said this is his first build. My first attempt at an engine build, so this is new to me. So
Justin, are you going to have somebody build it, or are you actually going to go through... I know you probably have somebody balance it, but if you're going to go through the build yourself, then you really got to do some homework before you do it. You really are going to have to. In fact, you might even call Ian on that Loud One, and he's probably got some insight, could steer you in. If nothing else, Loud One can give you some steps to avoid. If nothing else, join Discord. We talk about that. There's an automotive thread in our Discord server, just old school chat rooms, and it's discord.gg/Gen X Talks. It's free to go in there, but there's one about food. There's a thread about food. There's a thread about hobbies and cars and stuff. And we all jump in there and talk about stuff. That'd be a really good place, because we show pictures of what we're doing as we go along. Everybody's got projects in there, and everybody's interested in what each other's doing. If you want to do something like that, that'd be a good place. A lot of knowledge in that room. A lot of guys in there know quite a bit about cars. So there'd be that. Anything else, or can I move on with the silliness of it all?
You can continue on.
So the reason I brought this up, remember I showed you in the beginning, was gearless socket wrench. Now, what do I mean by that? You guys know that when you're wrenching on something and you got gears. I don't know if you guys can hear that or not. Wrenches, they click, 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 move, click, 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 move, click, click, click. That's what wrenches do. And you guys know the gear wrench. These are ratcheting wrenches, as they are, not just regular wrenches. But I brought this one out here because it's what they call a thumb wrench. It gets into really small places. It's got no big handle on it. But the gear inside is what we're talking about. You know, you got big wrenches that click, 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 and do stuff, and then you got medium-sized ones, and there's half-inch drive, and there's 3/8, and then there's down to 1/4, and you can go bigger too. But I need you to listen to the gear motion inside, which is what makes these work. Listen to this one. Ready? You guys hear that? The further apart the clicks are, is the cheaper the tool, generally. If you can do this and you can hear it, generally those loud, far apart clickings, it's not a good tool. It's a cheaply made tool for the most part. That's kind of how it goes. So that's a loud noise, and you can hear it. It does work, but they're not the best. And then you get into something like a snap-on, which is, I don't know if you can even hear it. The clicks are real close together, real fine, because it's fine machined workmanship, and they're strong, and they're made out of good steel. They're good wrenches. They're good socket wrenches. They're ratchets. Good socket ratchet. I keep saying wrench, and it's ratchet. But the idea is you have to be able to move it, click, 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 and then pull down. Click, 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 and then pull down. But what if you get into a spot where you get one click, down, click, pull, click, one click at a time? And many of us have backed out bolts. Many mechanics they've gotten in there and they're backing this bolts this long, and they're doing it one click at a time. Click, pull, dab, and it's tough. Well, sometimes you get into a spot, there's no room to back up the wrench for the click. Even as great as these are, there's no room. Well, what if you had a ratchet that had no click, had no gear? Yeah, you didn't have to worry about that. And they're already out on the market. This isn't a brand new invention. This guy, I haven't met him in person, but we've talked through Jacob a few times. He sent this one. Look, I'm doing it. You're never going to hear it. Look. You're never going to hear it. There's no gear inside. And the idea is that you can get down into a place where you can get into a tight spot, and now you can really move things around. You're not going to sit there all goddamn day, one click on a bolt this long. It'd take you forever and a week. But so they sent me this one, and the owner of the company said, well, what do you think? And I said, well, I didn't like the gold color, but I don't think that matters too much. He asked me what on these things here, and the first thing I told him was, now you see on a snap-on wrench, if I'm using this wrench with one hand, okay, I can click for off and on. See the lever in the back there? Kind of a shitty view. Okay, the lever's in the back, right? I can click it. There's off and on, and off and on, and I can do that with one thumb. While my hand's up in there, I can click it. Now I'm going the other direction. I can click it back. Now I'm going the other direction. Why? Because with your thumb, you can operate the lever. This one is similar to cheap tools. Cheap tools, you can still do it. You can grab this little triangle thing and you can rotate it, but it's difficult. It's not nearly as easy. It's tough to do. And as tools get worn, that's even harder to do. So I know it's probably more expensive to do it the snap-on way, but that's clean. This one's a little tougher. The next thing you look for is, how are they going to fit? Look how much thicker the gold one is. Look at how big the head is on that. That's not going to get into a lot of places. When you're working with ratchets this small in tiny places, believe me, that makes a difference. You guys may go, well, that's not very big. It makes a difference. It really does. So I just suggested, I said, well, I like that it's serviceable. It's got snap rings on the front, and it's got a snap ring on the back. You can take it apart and service it. The head was a little too thick, and I would have put the thumb on the back. Well, he's sending me another ratchet. Their next series, their next design is already out, and he's going to send it to me. I don't think it has any of the recommendations that I said, because it's too soon. It was only a couple of weeks ago. But it was nice of these guys to send it out, and it's probably a good tool. I haven't used it on anything, and when you're dealing with a gear like this one, it's solid. You know when you're on the bolt, and you can turn it and snap on strong metal, and it works. Is this going to hold? When I get onto something, if there's no gear in there, if it's just friction material, and I go to reef on something, is it going to hold? That's the question, and I know that's what everyone's asking right now. So I haven't tried it yet. I'm waiting for the next tool. I am going to go out there. I'm going to go to some exhaust bolts and see if I can't take off some bigger size, some medium-sized bolts with something small, see if it breaks or strips or doesn't grab. I'm going to be interested in that. But, you know, I don't know if this will be something I would endorse or not, but right now, I like it. I like the design. I like that the guys the owner's just talking to me about it. I think it's kind of cool. I'm sure he's got mechanics closer to him that he could ask these same questions to, and mechanics would all have the same answer. However, they probably don't all have a platform to reach people once you come to a conclusion. So, you know, I don't mind working with the guy and talking about it. He sent me that, and we'll see how it goes. But that's the difference between, you know, a gearless. The whole point of making something gearless is because you don't hear this anymore. You don't have any gears clicking, and they're certainly not far apart like cheaper tools. And guys who have, if I tell you that there are women that can go out to their husband's toolboxes, and please don't, you'll get in trouble. But if you did and he had several ratchets, you could pick one up and just listen, and within 2 seconds you know which are the good ratchets and which are the cheap ones. You know which ones he spent $200 on a tool truck and which ones he spent, you know, $12.50 at Harbor Freight. You can definitely hear the difference. That's all I was saying. Now, this is repetitious for some people. This isn't rocket science, but you guys ask me these type of questions. This is just basic automotive stuff, and I don't mind sharing it with you. There's stuff I don't know about plumbing, and there's basic plumbing stuff you guys could share with me. I don't know everything about roofing. I'm sure there's basic roofing stuff that I'd like to know. And this is why we're just doing a garage show, because we just talk about the basics, and we answer questions, which is good too. Gen X Mom, do you have anything you'd like to interrupt me with at all?
No, see if Sammy's texting.
Let's see if Sammy's got anything over here on Facebook. I'm probably ignoring her, and she's going to blow up my phone. Goes, you told me to write stuff in here, and then you didn't. All right, let's look and see. Well, somebody tried to call. Sig Nelson over on Facebook. Blue, how does it work? Have you had a good test run? Sig, yeah, I think it works on friction material, directional friction, like it just grips like your brakes would grip, or a clutch. I'm kind of thinking that it wedges itself in like that and then turns. And I haven't had a good run on it like Sig, but I will. I'm going to put it on some bigger bolts and see. Next one is Brian Hankey on Facebook Personal. What's the drawing behind you? Brian, I was explaining to the kids how steering worked. It was just a steering column, as you can see right here, steering column, and I was explaining how a gearbox worked, steering wheel to steering column, and then you have the universal knuckle, then it goes into the gearbox, and I explained how the pitman arm worked, and then I drew that out, and then I showed them on rack and pinion what the difference is, and you know what they could use. They couldn't use rack and pinion on trucks for a very long time. They weren't strong enough. They were too expensive to put on there, and they would break, and they tried it and it didn't work. Now they're on almost everything because they're bigger and they're badass and they work great. But these kids didn't know the difference between the two, because the kid's got a truck that has a gearbox, and he was building a go-kart, and we kind of had a sand rail on the side of the house, an old broke down one that I bought so we could kind of pilfer parts and see how things are supposed to work and be built. That had a rack and pinion. So I could say, now walk out here, and we lifted up the tarp. He's like, oh, now I can see one. So it kind of all came around. But I do that a lot with these guys. When they're working on something and they don't know how an alternator charges a battery, they don't know how an air compressor compresses Freon, they don't know how there's a hot and a cold side to the Freon system, they don't know there's a high and low side to it. I show them that, and we draw it out, and I explain why, and then it makes it easier for them to go back in and work on something when they have a little bit of the fundamentals on how something works. So that was just, we were just doing steering, gearbox versus rack and pinion. Yes, Gen X Mom.
Albert Ramirez on YouTube. So what do you think about the new vehicles being built? Are they reliable like the 80s and 90s? I feel like they're not, you will not get your money's worth. Sorry. That's
tough. When the last time I stopped working on cars professionally in 2017, that's when I decided to close up my shop and stay home, where I could be verbally abused 24/7 by my wife. I wasn't getting enough abuse just after hours. I thought, you know what, I need to come do this more often. So I folded up the shop, I came home, and I get yelled at all day long. I think you guys should try it. It's good for everybody, except for the therapy costs go through the roof, but I didn't see that coming. Anyway, the cars that I was dealing with when I left, ever since the 90s, the late 80s and early 90s, I don't like the plastic shit on cars. I don't like plastic bumpers. I don't like that they lowered the impact standards for the automotive industry. So now you don't have to have a steel bumper. You just have to have, it has to survive, I think it was 8 miles an hour was the only, that was the crash limit on bumpers. So they make those styrofoam filled bumpers with a plastic cover on it, and it's lighter and it's cheaper, and it just, I don't like a lot of those standards that they lowered so that things like that can happen. The things I can tell you, there are many cars that suck with engines and transmissions, and after they've been out 3, 4, and 5 years, and you realize the dealerships can't even fix them, right? I gotta stand up, guys. When you realize the dealerships are having trouble keeping them on the road, you know which ones to avoid. But the problem is you don't know that day one. You can't go buy a brand new car. It's like, well, this is our brand new 4-cylinder engine with our automatic transmission. You have no idea if that's going to be a piece of shit or not. So I can tell you, if you stick as close to old school as possible, and it's not always possible, there's a lot of things that they've perfected, and you find that more in trucks than anything else. And they have a V8 that works, and they say just Chevy has a couple V8s that they've very similar to years ago. They work, they'll go a lot of miles, they do the job, and the transmissions, they've kind of made those bulletproof now. GM went through a big backlash for about 5 years. They tried something new and it didn't work, but they've kind of worked through those. You just got to try to find something that's been in a car or a truck for a long time that resembles old school technology, and then they leave it alone. Those seem to work. Yeah, Gen X Mom.
Adam Fields wants to know, how much was that can of Freon in the background? LOL.
I think I paid $150 for that like 6 or 7 years ago, and I just realized it's almost empty. I still have my AC license, and people in town that'll sell me those. I'm scared to go buy another bottle, but I'm going to have to. Yeah. Shannon
Burgode wants to know, how would you tighten up steering on an old vehicle?
Well, you can't. Depends on what it is. If it's a truck, there's actually a way. Speaking of gearboxes, there's actually a way to adjust a gearbox, but everybody does it wrong. You can loosen the center nut, and then you can tighten the set screw that goes into the worm gear and tighten the nut. But then as soon as you rotate the steering wheel all the way to one side to where the gears are still fresh and brand new and never get used, you lock up. And so there is a way to adjust gearboxes, and there's not really much you can do adjusting slop in a rack and pinion setup. I mean, if you can adjust things, you can adjust your tie rod length, but for slop, that means something's worn out. Usually in front ends, if you have a sloppy steering wheel, at some point you have something worn out that used to fit tight and move, and now it's moving like this, and you're feeling it in the wheel. Normally that's the case. If you have somebody that can crawl into there or put it up on a rack, you can just rock the steering wheel back and forth, and you'll see it. You'll see pieces moving and one piece not moving very much. That's because whatever's joining that together is worn out.
It's a Toyota 4Runner she's talking about.
Yeah, it's usually just you got something worn out. There is some adjustment, but I would hate to tell you, go adjust your steering, tighten it up. You go find out what's worn out. That's the best advice. That's what I could tell you. Let me grab something here. Hydrating, because Trippy didn't say hydrate.
Sammy got anything?
Yeah, I just noticed that. Let me see what Sammy's got here in Facebook. Michael Dawson, is it a left-handed socket wrench? Yeah, this one is right-handed. I didn't get sent a left-handed one. If they send me a left-handed one, we'll talk about that. Jack Armstrong over on Facebook. Blue General, do you do any welding? And if you do, which do you prefer? I do a little welding. I can make things that'll be strong, but they're not very pretty. And so a little bit. But I've got oxyacetylene set up here. I've got a MIG welder here. I don't have a stick welder, which I'd like to have one. I'd like to buy a stick welder. That's the one I would probably try to continue teaching the kid on his stick. Randy Kurtzman, Facebook Personal, what is the newest truck that you can buy that would have a points and condenser? Man, what was the last year they ran points and condensers? I want to say what they switched. They started switching over in the 70s to HEI. Remember when Chevrolet did that? And 70, I don't know, 72, 74. I mean, there might be some obscure ones out there, but not by much. Everybody was going over to electronic ignition by the end of the 70s. I don't think there was any points left anywhere. Maybe even sooner than that. But if I remember right, I still think there was some early 70s stuff that had points in it. Something we used to do, if you guys know what points and condensers are, I don't think I even have one here anymore. I used to keep one in my junk drawer just to show people, but we would take a condenser, which is a little cylinder with a wire, and we would charge it up on a battery till the condenser was full of juice, and then we would toss it to a mechanic, and as soon as you grabbed it both ends, it would shock the fuck out of you. It would hurt you so bad, and we used to toss those to the new guys all the time. That was a lot of fun. And then I learned on the road in this, I wish I had a picture of this, or I wish I had something I could show you. Points open and close. As the distributor turns, it opens and closes, and that helps create the spark at the coil. Old school stuff, I won't get into that. But if you left your key on, you listen to the radio, your points were closed, they'd burn up. And your points would be out of adjustment, so you'd have to file them. You're on the road, you're in the middle of the desert, you'd have to file your points down, but now the gap is wrong. They're very critical on gap, and my dad, Bill told me one time, he said, find a book of matches. And you find a book of matches and put it between the points and let the points close on the book of matches and then tighten down each side. Now your gap is set. It was pretty fucking close. You get a book of matches and you clean them up, you're back on the road. You can take off and you're down the road motors again. That's an old school trick that you'd never, ever, 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 ever need to know. But now you know. You can write that down and have a conversation with your dad or your grandpa about it and say, you know what, I heard that a book of matches sets your points, and then you can impress you can impress an old guy like me. Yeah, Gen X mom.
Houdini says I always kept a book of matches or a business card in my glove box.
You have to. Yeah, that's old school. Guys like that, that's old stuff. Ian Porteus, Facebook Blue. I'm not even driving the bus. It's parked tonight and it crashed somehow. Well, that means the garage show is in full swing. If the bus is in a ditch, we're all sitting around here having a good time drinking and carrying on. So there you go. Now you know why we're doing a garage show. Because loud one, Ian Porteus, that goddamn Tasmanian motherfucker, ran the bus into a ditch or something. I don't know what happened. God damn him. Anyway, is there anything else in there you got? Or can we go on? Or
Becca Rowland said that's why they went to spark plugs? Question?
No, spark plugs weren't everything. Points fired the coil. Your coil fired... Now, let me just show you. I don't know if I can do this without... I will try to do this real quick. Real fast, calm down.
Ooh, yay, whiteboard! Whiteboard time.
Let's see if I can get this out here. Who asked that question?
Becca Rowland.
Okay, I need a pen and something to wipe this off with. There's the pen back here. You got a rag over there? Blue rag? Should have shop rags around here.
Yep, on the floor, just like a shop.
It's not where they're supposed to be. Oh, for Christ's sake, this sat on here too long. Let me try the other side. That's better.
No-Go says, show the interruption of the energy.
How am I going to show that? How do you draw that? All right. Let me see if you guys... Let me focus that a little bit here. Okay. Now I'll talk really loud. I don't know if this will come through. If you guys can't hear me, say something. But what I mean by points and condenser doesn't have anything to do with the spark plug. So let's just draw this out. Let's just say that we had an engine over here. Let's say you're looking down on this, and this is the front where the fan is. Okay, let's say that's your engine. Let's say it's a V8, and you got 4 cylinders on each side. All right, so you have a spark plug on each one of these, right? On an engine, you have 8 spark plugs. You with me so far? But you have to send a spark to that. So what they did was they had a distributor, and we're looking down on the distributor like this. If it came down, the shaft was here into the engine, and it's spinning. This distributor is spinning. And there was a set of points inside. One side was fixed, and one side open and close, and these points would just open and close. Okay? That's all they did. As this shaft went around here, it wasn't circular. It was like a stop sign. And this would right up against it, would open and close. All right, so there's a wire that comes out of here. And it's opening and closing a ground. Real simple. The next thing was, it went to a coil. And the coil, this went to one side, and the other side was for your key, and every time this would open and close, it would open and close that side and a spark would shoot out. Now that's really good, but we've only got one coil. So can we only fire one spark plug? Well, no. What they did was they just put on the top of this rotating piece, but we'll put it over here for practical purposes. If you look down on it, the coil went right into the center, and out of it they had 8 wires, and 1 went to each spark plug. So inside of this, which is sitting on here rotating, a rotor just took the spark would come down to the center, and a rotor would point it to the next wire, fire, point to the next wire, fire, point to the next wire, fire. And that was an old school way of how to get points to open and close a coil, so this thing would shoot out a spark. The distributor cap with a rotor would point at each one, and you had 8 wires and they went to 8 cylinders. It's pretty simple, but what they did was they replaced this and they replaced this. In fact, all 3 of these pieces went into one unit. By the mid-70s, it was all one unit. They still had wires coming out, but all of this was built inside, and the points were gone. They did it through magnetics. And where we are today, none of this exists. Now, they just take a coil that fires and they put it right on the end of each spark plug. So now you have a coil for each one, where we used to have one coil for 8 cylinders. Now we've got one coil for each one. The only thing points went away with was it made this a little bit more reliable. I mean, quite a bit more reliable, if the truth be known. I don't know why I explained all that. One question on points and there I get carried away.
Danny H. said, best damn explanation I have ever heard on this. General, you are a national treasure.
Thanks, man. I appreciate that. I didn't know if that was going to come across right or not, but that's the quick, the 5-minute version on a points and a coil and how it fires, and there it goes. So we don't got to worry about that anymore. That's old technology. In fact, even old race car guys don't even look for points and condensers. Not even for nostalgia purposes that I've seen. They always put on something HER. They're putting in brand new motors with coil over plugs. I mean, they put in something modern. If I build something, I'm not reaching my fat ass down here. We've talked about it before, but maybe it's a little bit more, a little bit more pertinent on a garage show. But I've got some small block Chevy engines outside, 4-bolt mains, and I've got under this toolbox, I have 2 sets of Camelback heads. And yeah, I would put a carburetor on it. I don't know that I would go back and put a distributor with points. I mean, I guess if I had one, you could go really old school. There's no point to it. You know, it'll actually run worse. But for nostalgia purposes, yeah, I'd consider doing that. I don't even know if you can find him anymore. But Brian Hankey, Facebook personal. Oh, wait, hold on. Jack Armstrong first. How about using foil to help with burnout fuses? We'll get back to that. Brian Hankey, Facebook personal. Well, my wife overheard you talking about the matchbook trick, and I just spent time trying to explain this to her, and now I'm getting bitched at. Why are you getting bitched at? We had to have the same explanation. There's no 2 ways to explain it. We had to both be on the same page. And don't blame me for your wife's bitching, man. I got my own wife bitching problems. Yeah, bitching wife. What do you got?
Calvin Mayloom on Facebook. How does Vacuum Advance work?
Yeah, let me go back to Jack Armstrong. You guys know what fuses are. Fuses in your house, which are breakers now. Fuses in your car. They're for the simplest version of this. They're soft metal. So if you have a wire doing something with electricity going through it, and it has a problem, and the wire's drawing amperage, and that wire's getting hot, like your toaster. You ever look inside your toaster and see the wires getting hot in there? That's on purpose. That is a controlled short to ground on purpose. You want those wires glowing red hot to make toast. Okay. You don't want those wires getting red hot in your car or your truck. So if they start to get hot and they start to cause a problem, a fuse is just soft metal. It melts. It just pops apart. It kills the circuit. Now you can go back to figuring out what's wrong. But what Jack said was, he said, what happens if you, because back in the day, if you blew a fuse, let's say you're out in the desert in the middle of the night and your headlights blow out, you blew a fuse. You're like, God, I can't see to get out of here. So you take Wrigley spearmint gum and you take the aluminum foil and you put it in there where the fuse used to be. And now electricity goes from one side to the other and out it goes. Yeah, you're down the road. Except now you have no soft metal protecting your wires from getting hot. Oops. Now, a lot of times back in the day when we were kids, we did that because the problem that was blowing the fuse was a problem that was enough to blow the fuse, but it wasn't enough to melt the wire. It never got that hot. It just was enough to blow the fuse. We'd put the aluminum in, the aluminum foil in there, roll it up to make it shaped like a round fuse, and off we'd go, and you figure out the problem later. But that's not the case these days. You can't, they've made it where you can't quite cheat like that. There's ways to cheat, but it's not easy. Yeah. Okay, so the vacuum advance.
Do you have to draw a picture?
Yeah, but I don't know if I can draw it. Well, how would I draw a vacuum advance to show you how that works? Well, God, I'd probably lose, a lot of people would lose interest in this, so we're probably going to lose almost everybody during this conversation. Because it's really technical and it's kind of it's a tough thing.
First of all, tell us, people that don't know, what's a vacuum advance? What is that?
Well, that's what I'm going to start with.
Okay, what it is.
Start with the vacuum advance. I'm not sure if you guys can even hear me on here, but we just talked about how in the old days,
Calvin said sorry.
it's the rotor spins around and shoots the spark at the next cylinder, the next cylinder, the next cylinder. So let me start with that. Let me start with, let's just, and this is not going to be correct, but for drawing purposes it might be. Let's say this is our distributor cap, okay? And let's say this is our engine. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. All right. Now, we talked about how the coil fires to the center the spark. A rotor underneath shoots the spark out to that wire, and that goes to the engine. It goes to the spark plug on the engine. The rotor moves to this one, the rotor moves to that one, the rotor moves to this one, the rotor moves to this one. Okay? Pretty simple. Pretty basic. Keep that in mind. Now let's pretend we can see inside. We can see inside this. What does the rotor look like? What is it doing? So a rotor, for practical application purposes, will make it look like this. And it's got a piece of metal right here in the center. So this fires to the center of that metal, and it's pointing there, and then the rotor turns and points there, and turns and points there. Okay. When your engine is spinning faster, I would like that spark to get to that cylinder a little sooner. It's fine when we're idling. It's fine when we're just sitting there running. It's perfect. And even if you just rev it up in your driveway, it might be okay. But you need to advance that spark's timing. It's timed perfectly. That cylinder, that cylinder, that cylinder, that cylinder, that all the way around. But when your engine is under a load and it's pulling and it's advancing, your engine is working harder, it could use that spark a little sooner. We can start burning that fuel in that chamber a little sooner. Well, how do you do that? When the engine's running and everything's bouncing around and moving and rotating, how on earth would you do that? So what they did was they built, and again, this is going to be sort of crude, but they built a vacuum diaphragm with a rod that went to the base of this, to the bottom of it, not to the actual moving part. It still moved. And if you applied vacuum, like if I had a rubber hose on it and I could suck on the rubber hose, it would actually move this. And if I let go of the suction, it would snap back. A car not running, of course, just sitting here for purposes I could show you that there's this plate that this rides on would move. So now your starting point, your spark, instead of hitting right over here, right in the middle of this, you're going to have that spark shooting a little bit sooner. And this works off of vacuum, and all it does is your engine vacuum. There's two sides of engine vacuum. It depends on whether you throttle or not. If you have engine vacuum with the throttle plate closed, you have a lot of vacuum, and then when you open it, it goes the other way. But the opposite is true on a carburetor. So let's not get into that. But as you throttle the engine, the vacuum, the sucking of the engine through the carburetor, through the throttle body, that sucking action, we can put a hole and put a hose on it. Now we have the sucking action through the hose, and we put the hose here. And if we set it up right and the plates are working, the vacuum is set up, as that motor revs down the road and you're tromping on it and you're getting on it and you're wishing you had a little more spark sooner, this vacuum pulls a rubber diaphragm in there, and this rod turns the plate a little bit and gives you some advance. Some work the opposite way. Some have vacuum all the time, and when you tromp on it, it releases it. But either way, it's always advancing. It's set up to advance. There's two ways those work, and they're not always common. But that's the basic principle. You're just trying to get that rotor to fire that spark, because this just goes automatically. It doesn't know. Remember the points open and close? They don't know when. Open, close, open, close. This fires, okay, I'm just firing away. This says, well, I'm just pointing wherever you tell me to point, I'm pointing. But to move it a little bit, to get that spark to fire a little bit sooner, this advance plate just turns it while the engine's running. That's about the best I can do. I'm sure there's people out there scratching their heads going, that guy's full of shit, fuck him, you know what he's talking about. Yeah, well, fuck you. You get your own show and you draw it out, dumbass. That's the best I can do. But anyway, I don't know if that helped. Did that help anybody? Is there anybody that made sense to? Have you all left now?
They're still here. And Nogo says when things were simple.
It really was simpler once you understood it. It wasn't complicated. I mean, you guys think, oh my God, how do you know that stuff? It's once someone taught it to me, it wasn't that hard to remember. There's much harder things in the world to remember, like figuring out women. That's a tough one. Yeah, Gen X Mom.
Calvin said makes sense now. He was the one that asked the question.
And I'm not even sure. I hope it makes sense. I just gave you the very basics of how that works, and I don't know. I can tell when I'm telling my son, because when he still has a confused look on his face, I go, all right, what don't you understand? Where did I lose you? And then we go back to the drawing board, but kind of hard to do that over the internet. Where am I at? What was it? Donnie Dellum on Facebook Personal. Why do they make blend doors in plastic? I have one on the driver's side, which is the hardest to change and keeps breaking. He's talking about blend doors. Yeah. That's always been such a stupid design. He's talking about blend doors. Blend doors they move your air around. You ever notice when you go from hot to cold in your car, there's a door that actually opens. It closes off, let's say, the heat, and lets the cold air go through. And when you turn it back the other way, the door actually has a little tiny motor, and it comes back this way, and it blocks off the cold and lets the heat go by. Did you know that? Yeah, it's pretty simple. That's how it works. There's almost always hot air back behind your dash. They just control where it goes. And the air comes on, the cold part turns off and on, but the heat's almost always there. So the blend doors are plastic because they're cheap. The part is that I wish they would do is they snap at the base, and sometimes I've had to take Dodge trucks, the entire dashboard out. What the fuck was that? Just heard a crash in my street.
I think the basketball hoop just fell over.
Whose? Not ours.
Not ours.
It's maybe one of the neighbors' basketball hoops fell over into the street because it's windy outside. Anyway, these blend doors, they have little gear-driven motors, and they're made of plastic. And when they get stuck or they get old, they snap. And I've had to pull the entire dashboard. I had to charge a guy $1,100 one time to pull a dashboard out to replace a $2 plastic door and put it all back together. I've done that on more than one occasion myself. Not like I had one of my guys do it. I've done it. Yeah, the plastic doors, but they don't give you an option. You can't buy one made of metal, you can't buy one made of wood, and it'd be really hard for you to design something and make something that would work. It'd have to be so lightweight that the motor could still turn it. You couldn't make it out of iron, you'd have to make it out of aluminum or something. I don't know. Yeah, they're a pain in the ass, and they're designed that way because they're going to fail. Steve Plum on Facebook Personal. So what if I wanted to lock out the timing? Well, if you want to just have base timing on an old one with vacuum advance, unplug the vacuum line, cap it off, and set your base timing. On a lot of the cars from the late 80s to the mid 90s, you actually have to set the timing because a computer began to control the advance. You'd actually have to take and jumper 2 wires or pull a plug or put a plug in, and it would put the computer in bypass mode. You could do that on those cars where they have those. You can put it in bypass mode, but it puts everything in bypass mode on some models. Like if I took an old Ford Mercury Topaz or something, I could pull the spark plug out. Not spark plug. There's a it's a plug. It's a voltage plug. I could take it out, and you could drive around with your timing right where you left it. If you do it to a Toyota, the same thing. Jumpering 2 in a Toyota puts the whole computer, in a base mode. So you got to be careful which one you're using. And on new cars, you can't at all. It's not even an option. Yeah, Gen X Mom.
Adam Fields wants to know, why are mode door actuators so hard to replace?
Again, with the blend doors, the mode door actuators, because they're buried inside the dash. Those actuators also, when you guys turn, defrost up your window, face, floor, or blend, those are doors in there that are deciding. There's just a tunnel of air, and there's a door in there that's deciding how much you get and where it goes. And those obviously are deep inside your dash, so they're expensive to replace because so much stuff has to come out to get to it. There's a couple of older pickup trucks where you can kind of get to some on the side. You get under the dash and they're in there and you can see them, but not many. They're just covered. They're buried deep inside there. So that answers that question. John Flores, the General's car history, our chapter 1. Early engine basic. Yes, it was in a time long forgotten. I'm drawing things that are going to be in the Smithsonian someday because no one's ever going to use them. No one's ever going to run across them. I think I'm only answering some of these questions because you guys have a vague curiosity. How did the old people live? How did the old people survive? Well, back in the day, we had points and condensers. I remember being stuck on the side of the road with a matchbook cover back in the day. That's all they're good for now, is those type of stories. So, but I don't mind explaining it to you. It's all I'm good for anymore, is stuff like that. Just so you guys know. Anyway, is there any questions over there from you? So we covered the ratchet thing. I didn't get to any of these tools over here. I had some more stuff to show you.
Well, do one more.
Do one more?
Yeah, do one more.
Let me see. You can see these boxes are worn out and dirty because I just never got rid of them. All right, I don't know if this will make any sense to you guys or not. I'll try one more, and some of you are already going to know about this. But if you have a lug nut on the side of your car holding your tire on, you see how this one has a hole in it for different reasons, but let's say this was a lug nut holding on your tire. You have 5 of them, let's say. And it's fine when the socket fits the shape, right? I can turn it. But what happens if this gets rounded off? What if it's round because some idiot put the wrong size socket and he just reefed on it, and his air gun, you rounded this off. Now you can put any size socket on it, it's just going to spin because it no longer has 6 sides. What do you do with that? Your sockets won't fit anymore. And there's all sorts of little tricks you can try to do, but one thing they sell you on a truck is there's a removal tool set. Let me show the whole set first. There's a removal tool set, and now I'll show you what one of them is. It's round. And you would say, well, General, how's if you have a round surface like that, and you have a round, I think I have one big enough for the back side of this, it'd be kind of cool if I did. But if this is all rounded off, and a socket or a wrench will not get on there, if it's round and your tool is round, what good is that going to do? Well, I'll tell you. These are round, but they get smaller. This is pretty open right here. Let's say this is 1 inch across right here. By the time you get back down to about here, it's much smaller. It's probably 1/4 inch smaller. Why? Because you would take this, and if you find one that barely fits over your damaged lug nut and you pound it on there with a hammer, which is why the backside of this is all beat to shit. See that? You pound it on there, which I shouldn't if I have a tool for that, but I'm lazy and I never used it. You pound it on there, it goes on there and grabs the damaged bolt, the damaged lug, the damaged nut. Now, also what you can't see inside is it's there's a little spiral cut in there. Inside of there, it's got a little spiral cut like rifling on a gun. So as you start to grab it, it pulls itself on there and pulls it down onto the small part, and now you can pull it off. They don't work quite as good as advertised, but they do work. And that was what always, kids would always come into my shop and they'd strip out a lug, and I'd go and get one of these and say, use this. And they're like, how is a round socket going to fit on a round bolt and take it off? And then once they learned that it gets smaller as it goes back, so you can pound the thing on there and grab something, they do work. And for anybody who's ever used one, what do they work? What would you guys say that you guys have used them like I do? What do they work? Maybe 3 out of 10 times, maybe 4. But they do work. It's worth a shot before you have to go to some drastic measures. But that's even all my sons grabbed these one day, and they all do the same thing as Dad. Why do you have sockets that have no sides? There's no measurement, Dad. What is this for? I used to just tell them it's for round bolts. You put this on a round nut. If you have a round nut, this is it. And they'd look at me and they'd talk to each other and they'd go ask other mechanics. My dad said this is for a round nut. I've never seen a round nut or a round bolt on a car before. Why would they make them round? Don't they have to have sides to grab onto? That was always the running joke with new people or my kids, because my kids are idiots. So that was a that was a tool back when I had a tire store. You always had to have. There's a lot of tools you have to have for taking off tires. Let's see. Larry Howell, Impact. Yeah. I'm not sure what Larry is on Facebook. He just wrote the word impact with a question mark. They're black, like you're supposed to use an impact gun on them, and you can, but you're not supposed to. Technically, you're supposed to put the weight of the vehicle on the ground. You're supposed to pound that thing on. You're supposed to use a long torque wrench and then use your hand so you can feel it slipping. But most of the time, guys just beat the shit out of it and get their impact gun. And if it comes off, it comes off. I don't know. You're in a hurry. All right. So again, for those of you just joining, this is not rocket science. We're not going deep and stuff. This is really shade tree mechanic, shade tree garage. We're just talking about stuff as it comes up. Questions you guys have, or old tools that I've got that I really don't use anymore, and why I still have them. I didn't do the garage sale this weekend like I was going to. Hang on one second. You apologize for that. My throat was closing up. But all the stuff around you guys can't see. Back when my wife just had her phone, she would show everything in here. I got to sell all this stuff off. I can't take it with me. I want to move. I want to move to someplace and downsize, so a lot of the stuff's going to go. Let me see if I can clear my sheets over here with Sammy Joe on Facebook. If there's any more Facebook things to talk about, real quick. Hector Peck from Facebook Blue. Oi, Puerto Rico loves the General. No way. You guys are watching Puerto Rico? Seriously? I love you guys. Thanks, man. Rob Podrisky, Facebook Blue, have you used a manifold stretcher? Yeah, manifold stretchers. They're hard to come by these days, but I do have one. And that's not a joke. You guys, there's a manifold stretch, like blinker fluid, fan gaskets. There really was a manifold stretcher. If you guys don't know what it is, I can probably demonstrate. I don't have it right handed, but I had two. And manifold stretcher is a real thing. You guys are thinking it's a joke, like, oh, I'm not. Send your wife in to ask for a manifold stretcher. They don't have. Yeah, it's not a board stretcher. This isn't construction. Gen X Mom, what do you got? What do your sheets say?
Sean for notes wants to know: do aftermarket items pay out to work better than manufacturer items?
Most of the time, no. The question was, does aftermarket parts, are they better or do they last? They don't. Typically, they do not last longer than manufacturer parts. Let me stand up again here. Ladies and gentlemen. And then we'll switch to this one for the last time. Typically, dealership parts are better, they're higher quality, and they do last longer. That is the norm. Now, there are parts that manufacturers keep putting on a car that don't hold up, that don't work right, and somebody in the aftermarket community builds one better and says, okay, enough of this shit. We built one that's going to last. We built one that's better. And they're out there. And depending on what you're working on. But that's not the norm. You're not always going to run down to Chief Auto Parts or Craigan's or O'Reilly's, and they're not going to have something better typically than the dealership. There are some things, there was, when I worked for Chrysler a long time ago, we could get map sensors from Aftermarket better than the map sensors the dealership. They just had years and years of a bad run. They were horrible. They just didn't work right out of the box. And so you could get an Aftermarket one that would work better because they had a little bit better design. But that's not common. The common thing is the dealership part is going to be better, is going to last longer, but it's 4 times the money. You have to weigh out the cost versus how long you're going to have the vehicle. And there's a lot that goes into that consideration, and we could talk about that some other time, because sometimes aftermarket parts that don't work quite as well, that do wear out faster, can cause other things to wear out. And it's kind of a difficult thing to tell you, but most of the time you're going to be safer with getting the right part from the dealership, the correct application, and it will be a good part that lasts longer, but not always. There are rare occasions when aftermarket has designed something a little bit better. All right, are we done? Mm-hmm. Well, the light is green, the trap is clean. I had more stuff to talk about, but my time is up. I got some stuff I got to do. Sorry we started a few minutes late, but we ran a few minutes long, so I think we're okay. This was the comeback. Yeah, this was the first garage show that we've had. I hope you guys had a good time with it. I hope I wasn't boring the shit out of you. It's always so funny. There's haters, that you can come into any stream talking about anything, and there's guys, oh, that's not right, and you should have drawn that, and that had it. Fuck off. I could do that to your guys' shit too, but I don't. If you're just having a good time, we're just talking here, we're just hanging out and having a few beers in the garage, drawing some stuff out and looking at some stuff, who gives a shit? We're having a good time. I'll answer the questions as honestly as I can. I'm never going to mislead you. Not on purpose anyway. I'll always give you an honest answer about stuff. So listen, I got to get out of here. Thank you guys for tuning in. Thank you guys for hanging out with us. Like I said, the garage show will be usually at 6, but between 5 and 6. And how many of you got a Patreon notice? Yeah, you got a Patreon notice because we went on Patreon and I said, hey, we're going on at 5 today. You guys have to join Patreon. It's $1. But it's the only way I can email you to tell you when I'm going on the radio, to tell you when I'm going live. There's no other way for me to tell you than to do it that way. So if you join Patreon, it's Gen X, patreon.com/Gen X Talks maybe. I don't know. It's on the website, Gen X Talks. In fact, everything's on the website. You go to the kids' website, genxtalks.com, everything is there. Again, link to the interviews, links to the videos, a calendar of where we're going to be in person. It's all there. If you want to go check it out and find the right link to the right place, that's the place you do it. Anyway, thank you guys for spending a little time with us, a little over an hour. If you had an hour of your afternoon or evening to waste, I'm very glad you chose to waste it with Gen X Talks. Well, yeah, it's a perfect thing.
They said, let's do this again. It was fun.
We're going to try to do it every Friday, all the end of spring and all through summer. You want to know the rule? Until my wife sitting in that chair gets too cold. When she gets too cold, then we stop doing the garage show. And I know you guys are all going to send her blankets and wool socks and jackets and go keep your ass going, keep your ass warm. We'll see what we can do. We got a lot of Fridays ahead of us, so we'll come back. And this is our first time we've tried to simulcast. It's always been a Facebook show. This is the first time we tried to do it on both, so we'll see how that worked out. Thank you guys once again. Not sure where you tuned in from, AM, FM, Sirius XM, or perhaps you tuned in across the planet on the Armed Service Radio Network. Remember 2 things: wherever you go, there you are. And I'll catch you guys on the flip side. Later.